In this video today, I'll show you how I created this color 3D printed lithophane. The first thing I'm going to want to do is edit my downloaded image. And so I've opened the PixLR website. I'm going to open the AI photo editor, and I'm just going to close this. I'm going to open my image, and I am going to open the image that I downloaded. Now this is normally a Christmas image, and I want to be able to use this duck year-round, so I want to remove the background. So I'm going to click on the cutout, which is shaped like a little pair of scissors, and I'm going to do AI cutout. And this does a pretty good job of removing the background. But if there are any touch-ups, like there's an ornament right here that I want to get rid of, I'm going to use my draw cutout. And I want to make sure that I remove. And then you just draw over it whatever you want to remove. And you can see here I accidentally removed some of this, so I'm going to click on keep, and then I'm going to carefully draw over the part that I accidentally removed to bring back the rest of the collar. And this looks pretty good, so I'm going to click on save. You want to save it as a transparent PNG. So you want to make sure transparent is selected, and we're going to click on save. And then I'm going to want to save it, and I'll just call it duck. And to create the color lithophane STL file, we're going to come to the itslitho.com website. We're going to click on Get Started. We're going to click on Upload, and we're going to upload our image. In this case, we're going to upload our duck image. Then we're going to click on Model. When it comes in as the default, it's going to come in as a flat lithophane, but we want our lithophane to be able to stand up on its own. So we're going to change the shape to an arc. And so now here there's a slight arc to it, and so it will stand up on its own. Now another thing I've noticed, the image doesn't seem to be centered vertically. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom to Image Options. And I'm going to want to move the image up a little bit. So we are going to do Placement Vertical. We're going to change this to 51%. And so what that's going to do is move the little duck up a little more. And that looks good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to click on Download. We're going to download the lithophane. We're going to give it a name. So this is saving the actual STL file. Now we need to download the color image that we are going to glue on the back of the lithophane. So now we're going to click on Color Lithophane. The first one is just the true color image. We don't want it, so we're going to click on Cancel. The second one is the image we're going to want. So I'm just going to call it Duck, JPEG. And so now we've created our files that we're going to need to create our color lithophane. All right, next we need to print out the JPEG file that we downloaded from the itslitho website. Now it's important that you print it out at 100% normal size. You don't want it scaled at all. I find the easiest way to do that is to use the Paint program in your Windows PCs. So I'm going to right click on here. I'm going to open with, and I'll open with Paint. I'm going to come up here to File, Print, Print Preview. I'm going to come up to page setup, and I want to make sure I adjust it to 100% normal size. Then I'm going to click OK. Now I'm going to print it. Now you want to print it on a very light copy paper. You don't want to use good quality paper that's nice and thick. You want it to be white and you want it to be thin. So I'm going to print it on my inkjet printer. I'm going to change the settings. I'm going to be printing from the rear feed, and I want to print it at the best quality that I can. So I'm going to change my quality settings. And then I will go ahead and print that out. And here's my printout, and I'm going to use my paper trimmer to cut along the outline that is shown on the printout. And here is the trimmed piece of paper, ready to be glued onto the back of the lithophane once it's been printed out. Okay, and here's the printed lithophane. And this is before we add the color to the back. Okay, we have our lithophane here, and what we're going to do is we're going to put it down face first, down on the bottom, and we're going to line it up with the top and the sides. And I'm going to use some Krylon Easy Tack. And so I'm just going to spray a little bit on the top of the picture. And then I am going to place it on where I'm lining up the top and the sides. And then I'm going to smooth it down. And so now we have our color lithophane. Okay, and since I have a Bamboo Labs P1S printer, I'll first show you how to slice it using the bamboo slicer. And at the end of the video, for those of you who are using Cura or Creality slicer, I will show you the settings for that also. But here we've got our Bamboo Studio. So we're going to come to File, we're going to Import, and we're going to import the STL file we created. And so that's the duck STL file. And so here you've noticed it has put it in the orientation that it needs to be. It needs to be standing straight up and ideally facing the axis the way it is. So we are going to be using our textured PEI plate. I am using a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. And I'm going to go ahead and synchronize my filament that I've got. So in position number 2, I actually have a white PLA. It's a Creality brand, and I have actually calibrated a Creality gray PLA. So I'm going to use that calibration, and then I'm going to change the color to white, since that's the color of the filament that I'm using. And then in position number 4, I actually have some Bamboo Lab 4 support material. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to start with the 0.12 millimeter fine setting. And then we're going to make some changes. So I'm going to come here to Quality and Advanced, and I want to change the order from outer, inner, and then infill. So the outer and inner. Then I want to go to strength. Let's scroll back up to the top. The wall loops I'm going to change to 4. And I want to make sure I detect thin walls. And the sparse infill density I want to change to 100% because I don't want there to be any voids in the lithophane at all. When I hit enter, it tells me it wants to make some changes. So I'm going to say yes, and we'll let it default to the rectilinear sparse infill pattern. Next, we're going to come to support. Scroll up to the top again. You do not want to enable supports, but we do want to have some raft layers. So we are going to have 2 raft layers. And if you are not using the support for PLA, the bamboo support for PLA material, I suggest increasing the raft contact Z distance to maybe 0.3, 0.4 millimeter. I find, at least on my printer, if I use the defaults, that it is holding too tight to the bottom, and I have a hard time removing the raft from the lithophane itself. But in our case, we are actually going to be using the support for PLA material. When you change the bottom one, it's going to ask you if you want to change some defaults. You're going to want to say yes. And then on others, you want to make sure that the prime tower is enabled. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make sure that it's got the right filament selected when we slice it. So we're going to click on our model, and we're just going to type the number here. So that's number 2, and you'll notice that changed that to a white. And now we are going to slice it. And it may take a while because the STL files are pretty large. And so here, you notice we've got our raft. We've got our prime tower because the only support material is going to be the raft material itself. The lithophane itself is going to be using the PLA material. And so now we are ready to print the plate. So we're going to click on Print Plate. This is where you tell it what slot in the AMS your material is in. My white PLA is in slot number 2. My support material is in slot number 4. I'm going to go ahead and let it do a bed leveling and record a time lapse. And so I'm going to go ahead and send this now to my printer. And it may take a while to download. And you can see here it's going to take approximately 2.5 hours to print. And as soon as it finishes printing, we'll go to the next step. All right, and here's my AMS. And right now, it is putting down the raft using the support for PLA material that I have loaded into slot number 4 of my AMS. When it's finished putting down the raft, it will switch to my white filament, which is white PLA, and it will print the rest of the lithophane. Okay, and it's winding back now, the support for PLA material, getting ready to load in the white PLA. And now it's loading the white PLA. And it's purging out now, changing from the support for PLA material. It's flushing all that out by feeding in the white PLA. All right, and now I'll show you how to slice it using the Creality or the Cura slicer. So we're going to come over here and we are going to open our file. All right, and now we are going to start with the standard quality. And you want to discard any changes that were already in there. And so we are going to be making some changes to the standard quality. So under quality for the layer height, we are going to change this to 0.12 millimeters. We're going to keep the initial layer height at 0.2. The line width we are going to change to 0.45. Our wall line count we are going to increase to 10. We want to make sure that print thin walls is checked. Our infill density we want to change to 100%. The infill pattern we want to make sure is set to lines. I am going to change my temperature to 210. For the speed, print speed I'm going to decrease to 45. Wall speed I'm going to increase to 30. The top bottom speed I'm going to increase to 25. Travel speed I'm going to lower to 80. And the initial layer travel speed I'm going to increase to 45. You don't want to generate support. For the build plate adhesion, we're going to want to change that to raft. And I am going to have a raft margin of 5 millimeters. And so now I'm going to go ahead and slice it. And then preview it. And once again, it's facing in the position you want it to be faced in. If you find that the raft is not sufficient to hold it down to the build plate, then you can increase that 5 millimeters to a wider raft. I find with my Ender 3 Neo that this is sufficient to hold it, especially when your lithophane is curved like this. And so these are now ready to save the G-code file and to use that G-code file and print out your lithophane on whatever printer you're using with your Cura slicer.
And I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye.